Malik.
Okay. We will, for John.
Right.
Ready? Okay, you ready? Are we ready, John?
Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah. The meeting's yours.
Okay. Call this to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All righty then. I think we have a new scribe tonight, don't we?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Anna,
Yes,
have you done this before with us? I don't remember.
I did your last work session minutes. I was a ninja in the background there.
Okay, and it went so well. Thank you. Welcome aboard. If we get out of line, just tell us.
Okay, will do. Are you guys ready for roll call?
Already.
Okay. Hurst,
Here.
you guys have to say where you are too. We have to know that you're in Michigan somewhere, I think.
Tampa Drive, Wolverine Lake.
Duff,
Here, Wolverine Lake, Michigan.
Nye,
Here, Wolverine Lake, Michigan.
Martini,
Here, Wolverine Lake, Michigan.
Sargent,
Here, Wolverine Lake, Michigan.
Malik, Snyder.
Here, Wolverine Lake, Michigan.
Anybody? Okay. On to agenda additions. Does anybody have any agenda additions? Ryan, you want to talk about the snowmobiling thing down under lake enforcement?
Yeah, I think so. I was just pulling up the agenda to see if it made it on there or not. I didn't have it in front of me.
We can add it, or we can talk about under lake enforcement. Up to you.
Okay, yeah, we could just talk it under lake enforcement, I guess.
Okay, I would like to add under new business, the possibility of adding 2 more bodies to this esteemed board.
Where would you put that?
Under new business for now. After Paul. Sorry. Are you the sergeant at arms, Paul?
Don't I have the physique for it?
Yeah, you do.
I intimidate everybody here.
7B. And I think there was something else in my email I wanted to talk about, but I don't remember what it was.
Wouldn't I be the sergeant at arms?
Oh, you could be. That's right, Mike.
Yes, you would.
You
You'd be
can
the
throw- you
sergeant
can-
at everything.
You can throw up any graphics you want. You're good at that.
Oh, please don't tempt me.
All right. Also, I'd like to add after that the discussion about clean boats, clean waters. I sent you guys out an article about that today. That'll be a brief discussion. Does anybody have any other additions? Okay, we'll move to approve the additions to the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Approval of the minutes, both our regular meeting and the work session. Does anybody have any additions or changes to the minutes as written, or can we get them approved as written?
I thought they were fine.
Okay. I move we approve the minutes as written.
Doug, 9 seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Call to the public. Do we have any public on the line? John?
There is no public in the waiting room at the moment. Nope.
All righty then. So very quickly, probably in record time, we are now to new business. Paul Hausler of Progressive A&E, you have something to discuss.
Yes. Am I unmuted?
You're good.
So am I allowed to share screen?
God, I hope
I'm
so.
gonna try it.
You should be. There you go.
Good. So start out with the Wolverine Lake Canal Improvement Alternatives Evaluation. It's kind of a mouthful. That's what Tony came up with. So we started looking at the existing conditions in the canal. This just to kind of give those that may not know a background is this all came about last spring. There was significant algae blooms in the canal. I would say worse than since we've been working out there, which was about 2013. I don't know if anybody else has seen it worse than that has lived out there longer, but it was pretty bad. Even I can admit that it was pretty bad. And I've seen some pretty bad stuff. So the board wanted to look into what the potential causes of this and if there's any remedies for it and what the relative cost to those remedies would be and if they would be effective or not. So we were hired to evaluate the canals in August, I believe, and then we started by collecting information, and then we collected some data in the field. Did everybody get a copy of this report?
I haven't seen it.
Electronic copy?
I haven't seen
Yeah,
it. till now.
Mike sent it out earlier today,
Okay.
so I saw
And
it.
I'm not going to go through every detail of the report because I know you guys can read. But just to give you, the background, and then there's this map here shows the area that we're talking about, which is the canal system on I guess that would be the southeast portion, the east portion of the lake. So we did some initial investigation. We had some historical mapping that was previously done from a 1907 USGS map of the Wolverine Lake area. If I can get this to show up there. So what we did is we took the aerial photography layer from GIS and overlaid it on the map from 1907. And you can see this was obviously before the dam was constructed. And it was basically a series of ponds or small lakes. I think there was about 5 or 6 of them, starting with Penny Lake all the way up to Pork Barrel Lake, which is an interesting name. And they were connected by the tributary to the Huron River. And a lot of what was between those ponds and small lakes were these little hatching symbols, which if you're familiar with USGS topographical maps, that's the symbol for wetland or marsh. And so there was a lot of wetland in the areas that are now underwater since the dam was built. And if you look back at the canal, there's a fairly significant wetland here. So in general, wetland soils are highly organic and they are rich in nutrients from years of plants growing and dying and leaving the material there to decompose. So generally wetlands to water quality are good because they act like a sponge. They absorb a lot of the bad stuff that's coming into a water system, and they also control flooding. But when you inundate them, when you flood them, they can be fertile ground for growing things. So just to kind of give you a background, that's what you would kind of expect in areas like that, is to have fertile sediment that can grow good things, either rooted plants or algae. So we measured the shoreline. There was about 7,500 feet of shoreline, and then the surface acreage of the water in the canal is about 10.5 acres. And then we did probings with a 16-foot rod that was calibrated every foot, and we measured. Basically, we could tell when we hit the top of the bottom, or the soft bottom, which is basically the water depth. And then we pushed down till we got some significant resistance. And that was basically what we call the hard bottom. And then that difference between those two is what's called the sediment thickness. So again, this is just an aerial photo showing the area of the canals, and these existing wetland areas too are in the middle. And then there's a lot of lily pads in there too. That's what those things that are up at the surface of the water, primarily lily pads.
Well, can I ask a clarifying question, please?
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about when you stick that pole in the water, you measure between when the soft bottom is and when you start meeting more resistance.
Right.
Are you getting enough resistance when you push down with that pole to get where maybe it isn't, I don't know what constitutes muck, but I mean, I would imagine there seems to be a cloud of materials that isn't going to give you any resistance at all.
Right.
For a while, but it's not going to be great.
Yeah, the first few inches is usually really easy pushing down into it. Then you start getting a little resistance.
Okay.
I learned this the hard way many years ago, that if you push down too hard, like putting all your weight, and I used to be stronger than I am now, but I've gotten that thing stuck in the mud a few times where it took 2 or 3 of us to pull it out. So I've learned to, when you get to significant resistance, you don't go further than that. But this chart here, I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of small text. I apologize for that. But basically, these averages down at the bottom. So the average depth of the channel or the canal system is about 3.5 feet. And these numbers, when we actually did the measurements, the lake was down about 9 inches from normal summer level, because they had already started. We did these in, I think, late October. And so they had already started drawing down the lake for the winter. So we adjusted these numbers to reflect the normal summer level. But these sediment thicknesses are obviously not affected by that. So the average depth to the soft bottom was 3.5. The average depth to the hard bottom was a little over 7 feet. So you have a difference there of about 3.7 feet. So that's basically how much softer sediment you have on average in the canals. You can see there's some areas where it's fairly
more
hard.
muck than water.
Yes, exactly. But there are some areas that were relatively hard. And then I think there was one area where it was 7.5 feet thick. So it varied a little, but on average, that's what the numbers. So one of the things we used, or we looked at was dredging, and, you know, dredging is a major undertaking. It requires a lot of permitting from EGLE, which is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. And they require a lot of testing and a pretty significant permit. It's typically between $2,000 and $3,500 for the permit alone. And then you're looking at significant cost if they make you do testing. Now, we had a project not too long ago that we were involved on the initial part of it, and then the residents of this, it was a canal, it was a channel on Lake Oakland. And basically we gave them some estimates, and they ran with those estimates and did their own project. They set up a small SAD just for the canal, Special Assessment District. And so they paid for it themselves. And basically that's where we got this $50 to $60 per cubic yard, that dredging cost. And what they did is they used a smaller hydraulic dredge, and then they use these geotextile bags, which are basically like a big sock that holds the sediment in and lets the water out. And so it just drains all that water out of there, because when you're dredging, doing hydraulic dredging, it's pumped in a slurry, so it's about 80% water when it goes through the dredge. So you have to drain all that water out. And then once it dries out for a couple months, they break those bags open and they truck it off. If you do that, you don't have to do the extensive testing that the state requires, because if you're gonna put it in a spot by the lake or somewhere else, you have to test for metals and polynucleic acids and all the bad stuff that potentially could be in the sediment that the state is concerned about spreading around. Typically when we've done testing in the past, what you find is arsenic and I think it's manganese that are typically high. And then once in a while, you can find other stuff too, depending on where you are in the state. So dredging, the cost for dredging, we estimated, and this is just taking a foot of sediment, so not the full 3.5 feet, but just a foot. And our numbers were at between $850,000 to $1 million. So you're looking
that's
at
based on sorry, one foot, but the whole footprint of the canal.
right for the whole canal system. So obviously you could do more prescriptive dredging where you're just dredging the worst areas, and that cost could come down. So, but you might want to go deeper in those areas too, depending on how much sediment is there.
I don't
So this
think
is
we
just
do.
a
I don't think we
ballpark
do.
figure to give you an idea of what the cost would be.
Yeah. I don't think we know it offhand, but anybody know offhand how many houses are on the canal?
I think there's about 20 something.
I'll
Yeah,
try and
we
do
didn't
low.
count them, but you could probably, from aerial photography, get a pretty good number on that. So that was the first alternative we evaluated. The next was augmentation, which is basically a well that is sunk to augment the water level of the lake. And the Wolverine Lake has 3 wells. 2 of them are operational. I think we got this information from DPW, and the 2 operational ones are on Wolverine Drive and Nantucket Boat Launch. One's on the north side and one's on the south side. And then there's also a well that's not currently operational in the Helmsford Road, which is right on the canal. That is basically, if I can find that map, it's basically right around between 114 and 115, about right in here. So that, when we first started working out here, that was operational for a few years. And it did seem to, at least we didn't see as much algae growth back then. So the idea would be to move water through there periodically, not run it all the time, obviously, because that would get expensive, but run it, you know, like every couple weeks or something, just kind of flush that system out and get movement in there. And then for the cost for, sorry for jumping around here, but the estimated cost for repairing the well and getting it operational was between 6,000 and 10,000. And the reason that range is there because they need to remove the pump. It's below the surface, so they would have to wait till spring to do that and inspect it. So, but they're expecting a minimum cost of about $6,000. And then the operational costs to operate all 3 wells ranges between about $5,000 and $8,000 per year. That's total for all 3, not each one. So that one, you know, is relatively less money, but it's obviously not going all the time either. So aeration was another option we looked at. The Penny Arm was aerated for 5 years. I think it stopped in 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the air lines are still there. The pumps were removed and they're stored in the DPW barn. So the village still owns those. And I believe the diffusers were taken off too, but I'm not sure about that. So there was an estimate that the village got for removing those existing air lines from Penny Arm, and that was about $6,000. When I had a hard time getting a hold of the woman at the pond guy, she was the one that was giving me an estimate, but she just came back this week, so I got that number this week, and she said it would be about twice that much and maybe more to move the existing the airlines and the diffusers to the canal system. They wouldn't need all of it, but they would probably need about half of what exists there. And
Yes.
the reason what go
I
ahead.
guess I just have a couple questions, so forgive me because I feel like I'm jumping around here, but you talk about dredging. Obviously, lots of residents have concerned about the depth there and the amount of muck that's accumulated. That would address that. It's not quite clear to me why dredging would have anything to do with the algae. I think we got 2 kind of different problems. The augmentation pump seems like maybe it's more focused around the algae control and less about the depth. I guess I'm trying to think, are all of these addressing multiple issues? Are they addressing an algae issue? What?
Yeah, I would agree that
is each of these targeting?
Yeah, I would agree that the dredging would affect more of the navigation, and then by allowing more boat traffic potentially in there, you could create less stagnation in there and less stirring up the bottom, there's nutrients in the sediment. So when they're stirred up, when people are going through a foot deep of water, they're, you know, any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The depth below the water that the boat sits, which is a name for that.
Draft.
Yeah, the draft. So any kind of, even the shallowest draft boats are probably in a foot deep are still going to stir up some sediment. What happens when that sediment gets stirred up? It makes those nutrients in the sediment available to algae in the water. So obviously, if you took that deeper, not as much is going to get stirred up. So it's kind of a secondary thing to reducing algae, but it's primarily I would say the advantage of dredging is improving navigability in the channel.
Paul, does the pump running the pump help with the depth of the water?
Probably
that
not
going
as
to-
much. I mean, it probably
Well-
is gonna blow it out a little bit right where the entrance of the pump is, but overall, it's not gonna have that great of effect on it. But it will move the water, because one of the things that promotes algae growth is stagnant water.
Uh-huh.
So if you can move it around, that limits the buildup of algae. And that's the same theory behind aeration, is that you're moving the water around and you're not letting the surface algae, establish itself.
Not to jump around, but back to your chart, there's a couple really low spots. Is there a way to do selective dredging?
Yep, you definitely could do selective dredging. And this is just a preliminary study to kind of give you guys an idea of what the relative costs are.
Uh-huh.
If you wanted to get more in depth in it and focus on certain areas, you would, if you're actually going to go forward with dredging, that's what I would recommend, is that you do a more selective dredging, and which is going to be, more beneficial for the canals as a whole.
I'm sorry, I don't want you to keep scrolling. Can you go back up to that chart? I just want to kind of see, just thinking about just a little bit higher. So we got 118, 19, 20. I'm just
Yeah,
trying
so
to-
this
101.
corner was the worst spot right here as far as thickness of the sediment, and
I'm
that,
trying to think, is there any correlation here between, I mean, if I were to guess boat traffic,
Yep.
at least the people that are leisurely cruising the canal, which I've done more than once.
yeah,
basically
so
come
this
in- come in at-
corner is like a sink, basically, that,
Yeah, you basically come in
Yep.
at 125, 124, you hit that loop, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, and you're back out, right? So does the data show that the boat traffic, say like at 118, 119, 122, are those areas actually better than 110, 160? I'm trying to look at that. real
yeah,
quick.
I mean, well, I think the best areas were, 124, 103, some of these areas, which is 103, this is a very narrow stretch here. Most of the sediment ends up again at the end of it. So it's moving that water through there and pushing it to the end. And then you get the same thing down in here too, where it tends to push everything to the end. So these channels.
Just need.
108 is the shallowest though, isn't it? To the soft bottom, 2.1,
Yes.
108.
Yeah.
I'm not, is that highly reeded over there, Kathy? I don't remember. Why would
There's
that
a lot of
be?
lily pads right in there
Oh, that's
too.
lily pads. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of boat traffic right there.
I'm sorry, point to it again with your pointer, please.
Right here.
No, but that's someone's house. So, yeah.
You ought to be
right.
real familiar with that place, right?
Yeah, so 108 is someone's dock. So is 107 and 106. So definitely you cannot circle this area. I don't know. Can you guys see my pointer?
No.
No.
Oh, okay, bummer.
Talking about this?
You cannot circle in that area, but you can come in from area like 124.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to go
What is
through
this?
here.
You
Wouldn't
can't
be able to
cut
go
through
straight
there,
through there.
but you
No.
can come in from either end. How about that?
Yep.
There's
Yeah, I
there's
guess
there's-
I'm trying to see if, and maybe I gotta play with this and plot some stuff, but is there a correlation between the boat traffic and the depth of the water, right? I would imagine so, right? You're buzzing around, probably the areas where there's not a lot of boat traffic ends up getting the sediment where there is boat traffic,
Right.
The only thing I can tell you was, so the homes from 117 to the culvert, those were the ones that were most interested in getting some kind of dredging.
And
You're
maybe
talking
we
about
just-
this long stretch
Right,
here.
that's actually fairly shallow.
Yeah, it's very shallow.
Everything else is better, right? And
It doesn't show that here though, right? I mean, everything else being better, I don't know that it shows that.
well, better in terms of people's perception as they drive their boat.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
one
see
of the,
number, I
we
don't
couldn't
see
even
numbers
get,
for down there.
with the water level down when we did those probings, we couldn't even get past about 116. So that's why there's no readings down here.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's very
Yes.
shallow.
Yeah, it's
That's what I
shallower than
thought.
what's showing here. Yep.
Okay, because
I think it's pretty much dry right now. I mean, it's like, there's like no water there right now with the
Correct.
lake
So I
down.
think if you opened up that pump, it would help these folks right here for sure.
Right, I think that's part of the problem, because the people who live right here on this canal, right towards the culvert end, they feel that the aeration from Penny Lake filled all that in.
Hmm.
Whether that's true or not's irrelevant. They were a little grumpy.
Maybe we just need to put a bridge over by Newport Court so that boats can drive under it. And then we can
Well,
just have traffic through and then we're good.
But I think too, in terms of just having better water flow, right? I'm not even worried about boat traffic. To me, that's irrelevant. I do think that just having some better water flow would be helpful.
Yeah, so, yeah, if you raise that water or you know, what's going to dictate the water flow is the way that culvert is designed. I don't know,
Yeah, and it's
Which way,
starting to
if there's-
fill up
right?
Yeah,
because the
So you-
kids play down there. That's the only reason I know.
Yeah, and what you know, it's blocked off by this chart here, but
Right.
what happens typically on the east end of a lake is the longshore currents move sediment along in there. So you could get some settling right in front of that culvert too, where it slows down.
Right. So I mean, I would think at some point we should suggest helping this area out a little bit. I realize back near those islands in the middle of the canal swampy area, probably not going to change that dramatically.
No,
Yeah, which is fine. I think, as long as the homes can get their boats, I think that's enough.
The pump house down there, it's like at I think it's like to the east of 114 there, right?
Yes, between 114 and 115.
Okay, and then, okay.
yeah, I
And
think
that's-
it's in this opening here between the houses.
Yep.
Yeah, there's like a little secret passageway that the kids take to get out of the subdivision.
Hmm.
And I guess describe to me what the physical pump is. Is it directional? Does it move water? Is it just adding water from the water table to the lake? I guess I'm not smart enough to know what it's physically doing.
So it's adding, there's an inlet structure that comes into the lake. It's not big, it's 10 inches. But it would provide, I think it runs, let me see what the numbers were on that. Sorry for jumping around again.
How long has it been down for?
I think 3 or 4 years, I want to say.
Yeah, maybe the problem is not
Into the south end of the canal, so it would push water toward the culvert? No.
Depends on
No, I
what the, depends on what the fall is. Yeah, I'm not sure which way it would go there.
Yeah, I don't remember either what Andy said.
Yeah, but maybe the muck accumulated not because of the aeration, but because the pump house.
No, and you're probably right. I'm sure. You know what I mean? I'm sure. I think we would benefit by having that on more frequently. And there was talk about adding or fixing the end of the pipe to help with directionality for flow and stuff. So I don't.
Is that possible, Paul? Do you know that?
Yeah, you
part
could
of the business?
definitely, depending on which way you pointed it, you could definitely have an effect along that narrow stretch there for sure.
Again, describe to me, it's pumping water from groundwater,
Yes, so it's
Underground.
yep,
underground
it's a-
water, and then it's coming out today in some kind of nozzle or some kind of diffuser at the end.
Yep, so it's a 10-inch outlet. And and then it has a capacity of 1,500 gallons per minute.
Okay.
So it's a fairly high capacity. I mean, it definitely would move water at that rate
Yeah.
for that
Okay.
channel.
I feel like the first thing we should do is fix that and point it up the channel and just have it blast for a season.
Yeah, and I think you wouldn't need to run it all the time. You could probably run it, like I said, for 24 hours every couple weeks or something, just to keep things moving. So the aeration, jumping back to aeration here. So the cost, it's kind of a big range because she said a lot of it would depend on, they have to look at the conditions there. And she said with snow on, it's not a very good time to do it. They'd have to go out there in March or something when the snow melts. But she said and also the condition of the aeration lines when they pull them out. Usually those are pretty good. They don't, unless they get hit or something. But that's why there's that kind of a big range between 12 and 20,000. And that does not include the electrical hookup. I'm assuming there probably is electrical hookup because of the pump there.
Mm-hmm.
So that would probably be the optimum place to put your pump, your air regulator there that goes in the diffusers.
Do you have any kind of estimate of, like, again, the dredging gives you some depth, the augmentation pump gives you something, the aeration gives you something, like what's the balance here of, how beneficial would either any of these things be? I guess it might be hard to tell, but
Yeah, I think the most dramatic thing would be dredging, but that also is the most costly. You would see the biggest improvement with dredging. I would say aeration, because of the monitoring required, which apparently even for canals, they require this monitoring, which is kind of crazy, but the monitoring costs over 5 years is $35,000. So plus the, running it and putting it in place. So that's when we come up with this $60,000 to $80,000 to aerate it for 5 years, which is pretty expensive for a canal system. In fact, I talked to a couple people at the Pond Guy. They said that Eagle has made this so difficult that they don't even do it in Michigan anymore. They don't do anything outside of what's unregulated, which I think is individual ponds less than 3 acres.
Mm.
So they don't even do bigger systems in Michigan anymore because it's just too costly. And then
That's not a very good news, Paul.
no. So the last alternative that we looked at, which is kind of a double, it's two-tiered, I would say. The easier tier is a product called SeaClear, which is an algicide. It has copper in it, but it also has a trace of phosphorus binding agent called lanthanum, which is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, both aluminum and iron will bind phosphorus also, but they both have detrimental ecological effects, or they can. So you have to do a lot more extensive testing with alum and iron if you're using that as a binding agent. Phosphorus is the primary nutrient that algae uses. So the idea of binding phosphorus is you're like stripping it out of the water column by adding this product called SeaClear is approved by the Eagle, and it would be under the aquatic nuisance permit. So you wouldn't have to get an additional permit. You already have that permit. And the cost would be, depending on the dose that you use, but the cost would be about $1,200 to $3,000 per treatment. And it probably would require about 3 to maybe 4 treatments a year, would keep the algae at bay, because you're basically starving the algae from that phosphorus. there's a product which we just had a webinar this week on, right after we finished the report, but Phoslock, which is an actual, it actually creates a barrier on the bottom and it locks the phosphorus in the sediment. So if the primary source of nutrients to that channel is from the sediments, which it very well could be, then Phoslock would be a good option because it creates a barrier where that phosphorus would not be able to come off the bottom. But that's obviously more expensive too. You're looking at $8,000 per treatment. And I think they were estimating 3 treatments over the summer. So a total cost of $24,000. However, that webinar that we attended, it's highly variable and it depends on the actual testing of the sediment. So you would have to do probably 3 to 4 sediment grabs in there to test for the component or how much phosphorus is in the sediment. Those run between $300 and $500 per test. You have to take them to a special lab to do that. So you're looking at, you know, a cost of anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 to test it. And then you could get a much more definitive cost of what it would cost to do Phoslock. They did permit a couple lakes last year. It's a new, relatively new product. And so they have some history with it. And typically what happens is the first couple times you try this, it requires a lot of legwork and a lot of to get those initial permits. But once they have the process in place, it's not as hard getting a permit. And this would be a Rule 97 permit, which has a $500 fee for that.
This is basically minimizing the phosphorus for all growth in general.
Right.
Not targeted towards specific thing. I would just eliminate or minimize growth in general in the canal.
Right. And what it does is the Phoslock creates, it locks up that sediment phosphorus. But you still, you know, could theoretically have phosphorus coming in, running off people's lawns or running through stormwater. So it doesn't eliminate it entirely, but it would, you know, if the sediments are the primary source of phosphorus for that channel, which, like I said, given the history of how that channel was created, that very well could be, but you wouldn't know for sure without doing that testing. So that could be an option too. That would be, you know, the other question is you don't know how long that's going to last. It may last several seasons, so you wouldn't have to do the $24,000 each year. You might have to do it, say, every 5 years or something like that. So based upon these different alternatives that we looked at, we thought that the best way to approach it would be basically the low-hanging fruit, which is doing these C-clear treatments. And then if those were not effective or people didn't think they were changing things much, then you could look at a couple different options, either the Phoslock or the augmentation well. Or the aeration system too, but I think the aeration system was a little expensive.
Okay, Paul. So if we follow your recommendations, we're talking about $3,000 for the C-clear, or is that per application?
Yeah, so it would be, well, that's the high end. That's if you're
All right,
using,
well, I'm gonna assume the worst.
right.
So
So
if
yeah,
we
If you did
take
3
your
of those treatments, yeah, you'd be around 9,000
oh, 9,000 if
for
it's
the whole
3 treatments.
season. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I know we were talking about trying to get out ahead of this algae anyway across the whole lake. So that, could this be part of that program?
Yes.
You know,
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, and if we if we recommend that they fix the Helmsford pump, what was that, about 10 grand?
That was 6 to 10 grand.
Okay.
Yep.
Kathy, do you know if the DPW has the capability or the bandwidth to actually fit some kind of nozzle, a directional nozzle on that thing?
I don't know yet. I can
Okay.
ask Mark and find out and see what he knows, because he's worked on that pump with Andy before.
Okay.
And I don't remember what the deal with shutting it off was, other than the high arsenic levels.
What?
That was my water, so that was my water well, but it has high arsenic. That's why I'm on city water and the rest of the village is on well water.
So if we turn it on, we could be putting arsenic into the lake?
Probably, that's probably why it shut off.
Oh, so it wasn't that the pump was bad, it was because of the water tests that they took, or?
Yeah, because that was our locations. What do they call those? Community well.
Community well?
That was our community well to feed Newport Court and Helmsford Court. But they had to shut that off because the arsenic levels are too high. So I'm on city water.
Oh.
Well,
puts a real-
your problem.
Yeah, it puts a real bummer on the pump idea.
Yeah, I mean, it won't hurt to ask, right? Let's ask
Right.
and see, it's one thing when you say high level for drinking water, right? What does that mean? Right? And I'm
Right,
not
there's-
saying that we want to like go ahead and do it, but let's get an understanding before we just,
Yeah, because the drinking water standards are a lot stricter, obviously, than
Right.
surface
and I
water.
don't think it was anything severe. It was like a couple ppm greater than what it should have been.
Okay.
We
And you
have,
can always get it rechecked.
we have 2 other wells that pump into the lake as well. As we have 2 other wells with pumps, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, so if we decide that we want to look into it, maybe we should look at all 3 for arsenic level. Just
Yeah,
because if the
yeah,
other
it's not a
2
bad idea.
are at the same level or lower or higher, then that means this well is within that range.
Well, I'm curious, other people still live in the village. Don't you guys check your well water every year?
I don't check mine every year.
Yeah, I've never checked it. Maybe I should.
Yeah, you might wanna.
I have all
girlfriend-
kinds of filters on it though for drinking, so.
Yeah, and I don't remember. I'd have to look up which filters do what, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing is the background levels of arsenic, which depending on where you are, can be higher than. So that usually plays into it too. So
Right.
typically more developed areas or some intensive agricultural areas have higher arsenic values.
All right. So Paul, if we decide that we want to look at selective dredging, there's a way of doing that.
Yep.
That would be a different estimate, obviously.
Yeah, we would probably do a little more detailed analysis of those areas and give you what you would want is some schematic drawings if you were going to go forward with a permit application.
If the area is dry due to the fact that the lake is down, is that still dredging or is that the same kind of permit?
Yes, it's still dredging. You can use different equipment, which could be cheaper, but you'd have to be able to get it in there. So you have to have a large enough area to get like an excavator in there. But it is quite a bit cheaper than doing hydraulic dredging. It's probably about half the cost.
Okay. Because I was, there's a couple other areas on this lake when the water's down, it's all leaves, and I was just wondering if there's a way to suck up the leaves or clean. Would that require a permit?
That's not, as long as you're taking just the leaves and not sediment, it's a little less, you still have to get a permit, but it's a little less rigorous getting that permit. They do have, it's called a suction harvester.
Really?
That it's basically on a pontoon boat. It's a modified pontoon boat.
Yeah.
And there's trying to think, it's a expedited permit for that. It's a little less, the Eagle still reviews it, but it's not as extensive as a dredging permit.
So are you familiar with somebody that provides that service?
Yes, there's a few of them out there. We could get you some cost estimates for that.
Could you just send some information to me? Because I was actually thinking about this for another part of the lake. And it's that little piece that sticks up over there on Laguna behind Mallow Beach.
Yep.
That is surrounded by trees, and that area, man, it's just all leaves and it's filling in. So I didn't know.
So you're talking about this area?
Yeah. And actually I had one of the residents ask me about can anything be done back there, but when the water's down, it's leaves. So,
right.
But it's literally down to like maybe 6 inches back there when the lake is up, and it's completely dry right now. So I think there's a lot of areas on our lake we could actually do some kind of leaf removal or debris.
Yeah,
removal.
they besides the pontoon thing, they can do it by hand too. It's the diver assisted suction harvesting, but they have, it's basically like a trash pump. And they hook it up to these mesh onion bags, and it just collects it's the same theory as those geotextile bags, that it brings in the solids and lets the water drain out.
Okay. Yeah, could you send me some information? Because I wanted to kind of look into that. I'm not sure this applies to the canal. I don't think it's, leaves back there, but I can tell you going through there, even in a kayak, is difficult because I have the ones with fins on the bottom.
Yep.
So it's real shallow in there.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions of Paul?
I mean, I guess, do you have a recommendation on what we should do? You have some options here. Obviously, there's a large span of money.
Yep.
Maybe we could say the money is not an option issue. I don't know that dredging gets us what we want. I don't really have a good feeling for what aeration is going to get us. To me, the augmentation pump seems like an obvious thing we should be doing.
Yeah, but the recommendation would be this using the Sea Clear for the algicide, and it's also got the polishing agent or the binding agent, and then looking into revamping the Helmsford pump to get that operational again. Obviously, that's maybe some testing involved there too for the water quality.
Yep.
Those would be the two low hanging fruits. That maybe start with those. And
yeah, forgive me because I don't know the brand names, but the product that we ended up putting in there this year that seemed to improve things quite a bit and was like a slow release type chemical.
Yeah, we used a product called Captain XTR, which is a chelated copper. So it's similar properties as Sea Clear. It just doesn't have that binding agent. But that was specifically for that net-like algae. That was the reason we use that, because it works well on that.
Sure. Okay.
Well, Paul, before we let you go, we do want to attack algae in general on the lake. So is there anything that you want to tell us before you get off the meeting about that? Because I think we really want to
Yeah,
we
so,
want you to do that.
right.
As soon as possible, whenever that is, so.
So I think I sent you a preliminary
Yeah, you did.
schedule. And this is all, the timing, is kind of dependent on the weather, Mother Nature.
Sure,
We're supposed to
right,
get a
right.
we're supposed to get a mini polar vortex this weekend.
Right.
So, who knows what it's going to be like in a month, but we're probably going to have fairly decent ice after this weekend. So that plays a big factor into, last year we had a really mild winter, didn't have as much ice. So it allowed those spores to be more active in the spring. That's how the algae overwinters. But what we have here is a little more intensive sampling or survey schedule, which is what we did last year too. Particularly in the early season, that's when we're doing surveys about every 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, is May early enough to be after the algae, or do we have to be out
Yep,
ahead?
so we have a May 5 tentative survey scheduled, and that's the same date as your meeting, your water board meeting. So I plan on attending that as well. I don't know if it's going to be in person yet, but.
Well, that's okay. Actually, I kind of think it makes it easier for guest speakers like you to come in if we're virtual. So we might.
Yeah, and I've tried doing it on my iPhone and it worked fine. Wasn't great, but it worked okay.
All right. Okay, so you'd come in May 5th and make an assessment about, and part of that would be about the algae, and also I see you have the sea clear in the canals possibly at that same time if we do that.
Yep, exactly.
And then you have the sea clear again in the canals?
Yeah, so these aren't, that does not mean that we're going to treat every time. That basically just means if it's needed, we can do it. So you're not likely to, there's a minimum of 2 weeks between treatments. So you can't treat the same area at a greater intensity than every 14 days. That's the minimum required time frame between the algicide treatments.
And we're talking about algae beyond the canal, right? I mean,
right. Yeah, we're going to be looking at other areas too, but typically the stagnant areas are where it starts. And then what happens is once it starts multiplying, it expands or moves around with wind and wave action.
All right. Okay. Are we supposed to tell you this is okay, or are you just assuming this is okay?
No, it's a preliminary. So if you guys, you don't have to change it tonight, but if you want to look at it in more in depth, and if you think you need to, change it at all, we certainly can do it. It's not set in stone by any means.
I haven't published this out to the board. We can talk about it, but I don't see that I have any input to tell you you're doing something wrong here. So I think it's the right thing to do. Does anybody else have an opinion? Well, then for now, Paul, just assume that this is your schedule.
Okay, unless I hear different, that's what I'll assume.
And guys, I'll get this out to you. Sorry, I didn't get that out, but Paul gave it to me, I think this week or earlier this week or last week. So, all right. Does anybody have anything else?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, Paul. I think that at some point we'll probably, I think we're leaning toward taking your recommendation. We'll discuss that one a little bit later. But I also think that I still don't have a problem with looking at some alternatives like dredging or this other maybe spot places in the future, and we'll get some numbers on that because we can allow the homeowners to decide if they want to.
I looked it up, like just ballpark counted some houses on Google Earth or whatever. It's like 37 houses back there. It'd be like
Yeah.
$28,000 a house to get rid of a foot of sediment. So talking $200 a month for 10 years on a SAD.
Man,
My guess is they're not gonna.
that's crazy money. Yeah. Plan B. But we still need to look at it and allow folks to decide. You know, we need to give them the option. So whether we think it's crazy or not, I don't own a house back there, so I don't have a dog in that fight. Okay.
All right.
Anything? All right. Thank you very much, Paul.
right.
Appreciate the help.
Take
Yeah,
care,
thanks,
everybody.
Paul.
Appreciate it.
Yep. See you.
Thanks.
Okay, we can discuss that later in down there in the 10B. I wanted to get on to the other new business. I put this in my email today. We are a viable board at 7, 5 plus our esteemed colleagues from planning and the council. Does anybody have an opinion about adding 2 more folks to the board?
To
Does
what end
anybody
are we thinking about doing this?
win?
No, to what end? What
Well,
what are we hoping to accomplish here?
well, that's a good question, Mike. We've got a lot of things we're trying to get done. If we think it's too much for our little 7 plus 2, we can see if we can get more help. If not, we can go as we are going. We all know that it's difficult to get people on the board. I have no problems with the group we have now. Obviously, I think we're doing very well. I just
I
wanted.
don't know. You think it's difficult to get people on the board? I think this board is probably easy to fill. I know when I tried to get on the board, there was 3 people waiting in line.
Yeah, me too. But I like
Well-
the idea of beefing it up because there's a couple reasons. One is, as you said, Mike, but the other is that it would make it easier to make a quorum if we had people that couldn't be here.
Have we ever not had a quorum? At least in the time that I've been on this board for the last
Yeah,
3
that's
years,
true.
we've
No,
never not
we
had a
haven't.
quorum. We've never
Yeah.
had a canceled meeting and never had no quorum.
Good point.
In my opinion, I like the way we work right now. I like the way we're, especially with the tools we have in front of us, and I feel like we're just hitting our stride right now. So I don't feel like we need more people. So I wouldn't vote against adding people, that's for sure. But I don't know that it's necessary.
I'm not in favor of adding people at this time. Maybe in the future, but right now, you start getting a large group, it starts getting more difficult to make decisions. So the more people that are here, the more the more difficult the decisions become.
Yeah, so it's been this number for as many years as I've been on it, and I think that we work fine. So that, to me, there's no need to complicate it anymore.
Okay. Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think Mike's right. You get too many people, and unless everyone has their own job in relation to the board, almost like creating a subcommittee,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to have more people. It's going to take longer for everyone to have their turn talking. Everyone's going to have their own agenda.
Okay, well, we can table this toward the end of the year, see how this goes. We've got a pretty healthy list of goals and objectives to get through this year, but we seem to be plowing through them okay. So if everybody's comfortable with the way things are, I support that as well. So speaking of new opportunities to excel, I sent you all an article about clean boats, clean waters. New initiative at Eagle, or not new, but started up a couple years ago. But apparently there's some money floating around out there for boat cleaning, boat washing.
Yeah.
And Not that we don't have boat washing equipment, we do. I don't know if we have the latest greatest. I do know that, you know, one of the things I liked about the article is they talked about getting some help with education. I think that certainly would help about compliance. I know Paul's just willing to get up on top of his roof and count the number of boats that are washing at the boat wash station, right?
Put a camera over there, one of those ones that the
There
deer
we
hunters
go.
use.
There
Yeah.
we go. A grandma camera, a cat
Yeah,
camera.
grandma camera.
Mike, I would be in favor of looking into making it more of like a power wash, you know, a little bit. This is just, I think, gravity fed, isn't ours?
Okay.
I
Yeah,
can't
I mean,
remember.
ours is like,
It's like a
isn't it
trickle.
like air pump. It's almost like
Yeah, I
a
don't
weed
know.
killer air pump.
Yeah, it's not very good. And I can't remember. I think there's a way you can request financial assistance
Yeah.
because our launch is part of a DNR launch. I could have swore one of the lakes up north did this.
Yeah, that's the article he sent is at least.
Okay,
from
I'm
you.
sorry. Forgive me,
This is
I
a
didn't
new
get a
grant.
chance to read it.
You didn't
But
get a
it's not
chance
that
to
much
read it, but
money.
you're
Sorry.
volunteering for the work.
Okay, I'm actually working right now.
No, I think I mean, it's out there. I don't use the wash. I'm sure that it can be improved on both usage and operationally wise. Is there anybody on the board that's interested in chasing this thing down? I'm sure the village administrator can help us with going after grants. I did not open up the website and see how much information is out there. I'm sure there's a bunch. There's probably even going to be some webinars coming up on the topic. So does anybody have an overarching desire to lead the charge on this boat washing, Kathy?
All right, I'll look into it. I'll look into it and see what it takes to put a better station
Well, you
there.
just got your canal thing done, so you don't have anything else to do.
I know, right. Okay.
Unless somebody else is, I mean, Paul's all over the sewer thing. Ryan's doing all his stuff with the harvester. Doug's about ready to get busy with budgeting. Mike, you're the sergeant at arms.
I'm trying to get on the Huron watershed board or whatever that thing is. As soon as anybody, consistently answers an email, we'll find out where that's at, but.
Okay. Okay, Kathy, so you'll look into it and let us,
Yeah, I'll
certainly
look into it and
don't be
see.
bashful. Send me an email if there's something that's overwhelming. And
Okay.
The boat,
Yeah, I
the boat
will.
wash setup we have now, we paid for that? We set that up or that was through this program?
I have no
Hey,
idea.
You know what?
before
I'll
my
ask.
time.
I'll try and get the history of how that happened.
I know it was a
And
big
somebody
deal.
told me, right? My husband told me how it happened. I don't remember.
You don't listen to your husband.
not as much as I should, probably, right?
Wow.
Okay, well, does anybody, okay, that's the end of new business.
Hey, Mike, I have a
yes.
question.
Sure,
Progressive
go ahead.
contract?
Yeah, oh, Paul, I was gonna put that in down at H.
Okay.
Plant control and invasive species, but thank you. You weren't gonna let
Yeah.
me forget, were you? No, later on, I'm gonna make a motion that we bring Progressive on for the next 2 years. It's something I forgot to do last month and severely apologize for that. Doug has volunteered to make sure we don't get through this meeting without doing it, so. Okay, that's new business. On to 8, administrative report. Current lake level, literally, I got a note today that said the lake is iced over, everything's iced up, and it's not going anywhere. It's at normal levels. So obviously, lake level at this time of year really isn't an issue anyway. I know of no noteworthy complaints to the village. Ryan, anything?
Other than
on-
the snowmobile thing and the,
Right, and I've got some things to discuss about that when I get to my comments, because I had a conversation with, well, I'm there now. So under 9, chairperson's report and general communications board. The only due out that's not closed at this point from last month is the watershed thing, Mike. So I know you're trying to get on there. Obviously not something that's overarching right now, but it's great that we're trying to get on there, and I think it's important for us, especially downstream here. Pardon the pun. I did call into the Parks and Rec meeting a couple weeks ago. We discussed the idea of doing some joint work together. Julie Miller and I talked about her possibly joining this meeting sometime in the future. I figured based on everything that was going on this month that we would table that until next month at a minimum. But they have some ideas, or they have some thrust toward road endings as well. So as far as that goes, we may have some collaborative opportunity there. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm not sure how far that'll go between the two boards, but at least we both have some of the same interests. And probably Julie will check in with us next month if I can get her on and kind of go over some of the things that Parks and Rec is doing. And I filled her in on what we were up to when it came to road ending and some other ideas about bird sanctuaries and things like that, and nature areas. They're already working down that road of a nature area. So, and then finally, on the snowmobile incident, I called the chief, and he was very clear that that is a state level issue, that we literally have no purview over that part of the enforcement on the lake. You guys probably saw another email that went out. Later on, we can talk about what we want to have brought to the board, the council next week. And if necessary, I can call in and make that statement, or somebody else from the board can do that as well. But literally the lake has no purview. The lake enforcement, the lake police, or our police, have no purview over that. I did, however, say that I think this board would be interested in working additionally on more education and possibly signage. Can't hurt. And he reminded me that we offered a snowmobile class last year, and only one person signed up for it, and that was one of our councilmen. So, he is very interested in this as well. In fact, I was going to say that we have him on the calendar for March. Actually, I'm sorry, we have them on for April. If you guys want to pull that up a month, we can do that. He's also obviously very interested in boater safety classes and the snowmobiles. I've consulted with him in the past on what the liability is with motorcycles, because there's kids out there that come screaming down the lake right at my dock. And obviously when you're 12 or 14 years old, you don't understand that you may not be able to turn. He's assured me that there is no liability involved because it's it's an obvious danger. But anyway, he's on the schedule to be on with us in April. At this point, if you guys want me to invite him for March, I can do that. I guess I'll leave that up to the board. So that's what I have to say about the lake.
It just blows my mind that if you're on your boat and you don't have a life jacket that fits the size child you have, you can be cited, but you can drive your motorcycle 80 miles an hour in a circle around people that are ice fishing and there's nothing that can be done about it. It just,
Well,
I-
yeah.
I'd be interested in I don't know, some way of engaging with the chief to, maybe we can't enforce things, but we can work with things like signage, and we can work with public service announcements and those kinds of things. It was just a horrible thing that
Right.
that happened.
And the DNR put out something, it was on the news this morning, how they are really, promoting snowmobile safety. There've been 6 snowmobiles go through the ice in the last, or is it 13 in 6 weeks, or 6 in so many
Yeah.
weeks, but there's been a lot of them, not just this one. I think, somebody went through the ice up on White Lake like last weekend or something
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll ask you guys now, do you want me to ask Chief to come in next month, or do you want to wait until April?
My preference would be having him move forward. If
Okay.
that's
That's
just me.
I don't have
anybody
an
else have an
opinion on it.
opinion? Pardon me?
I don't have an opinion on it really. I would think that April might be better because then we could start talking about boating, but we still have to survive the winter, so to speak.
Can he come twice?
Oh, I'm sure he can. I'm sure. he
Okay.
can.
What was on the agenda to discuss with him in April?
Just his annual trip in to see us, because he does it every year.
Yeah. I think maybe moving it forward might be worthwhile. I mean, I guess my whole opinion on the thing, and I guess it's a liability thing. I know that they echo that the no ice is safe ice, and that's the message they want to put across. But I feel like if you have that message, people probably are definitely going to ignore it. It's not,
Yeah.
it's.
Okay,
just-
so we'll
It has its
I'll ask
truths.
him to come next into March. And I will tell him that we are very interested in understanding the limits that we have as a village, the limits we have as a board, and certainly the limits and the liabilities we have as homeowners in the village. So.
And
and
I
I'm sure
think, and I don't want us to take responsibility to say where it's safe and where it's not.
No, I don't either.
But I think there's probably something about, I don't know the facts, but just comprehending the direction of water flow in the lake, and how the end on Benstein probably is the last to freeze every year, and maybe just informing people on the dynamics of the lake, and how that might affect ice forming. Could be something that could be educational. Yes, you should check everywhere you go. You should know ice is safe ice, but there's added information that could probably be provided specific to the dynamics of this particular lake. That might be
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, I forgot to mention that particular individual did come onto our lake through the public access. So there was a chance that he may have just come over off of Benstein, or come across from Wixom, drove across, but he actually apparently came in through the public launch.
Yeah.
That being said, Ryan, you talked, and I like this idea of the QR symbols and some, informational things we can put on posts around the lake. And we certainly could put something about snowmobiling on those QRs. So just another thought on top of the anything we do at the launch. So
Yeah, I think having some winter related sign at the launch is completely, we have a standard, what the rules of the lake are. I think an informative winter sign there would be reasonable. And like I said, even if, like I said, there might be some stuff we have to investigate, but I'm sure traditionally, at least in my knowledge, right, that what the west end of the lake, right, it's last to freeze, right? Does everybody know that? I don't know.
I didn't know until the accident happened, but I'm not a snowmobiler and I'm too old to skate. So I don't have a lot of skin in the game there.
So the
Yeah.
last 3 winters we were here, that area has been completely frozen. So this is the first time it's been open. So
Yeah.
not a surprise
Okay.
to me.
Not to belabor any other points, but did anybody see the plane land on the lake today?
No.
A plane, I thought he was going to take back off. Must have been about, it was a little
Yellow?
after 2:00, 2:15.
Yellow plane?
Landed, yeah, landed in the middle of the lake. And it didn't just touch down and go like it does when there's water. It landed and it turned and then it taxied down to the other end of the lake by the fish shanties and sat there for, I don't know, a couple hours. My wife saw it take back off. I had other stuff to do, but first time I ever saw a plane just land on the lake and hang out. It was pretty cool.
I'm going to invite the chief to come on next month, next week, or next month, excuse me, and I'm sure he'll be able to make it. And he may have some ideas and some videos already, so he can share those on his screen. And I think that we need to probably focus on the educational side of this and what we can or cannot. What we recommend is on the website, at least from an educational point of view, as well as what kind of signage or any kind of education programs we can put together. So I'll handle that. I've already talked to him about it, and he said he's more than willing to come on. Just let him know when. So that would be the end of my report. So let's get on to continuing business. Sewer SAD initiative. I have the motion here in front of me as written and edited by Doug. Let me share my screen. Anna, this is going to be long, so I don't know if you want to read my screen or let me figure out how to share my screen first. There we go.
Type fast.
You guys see that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's up.
So Hannah, this gets into the administrative part of this. This is a very long motion. I was gonna probably go ahead and forward this straight to the village after we pass it, if it passes anyway. But I didn't know if you wanted to take your notes from here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I can actually, because I'm zooming in from my iPhone. I just screenshotted it too. So I'll
Oh,
have
wow. Well, see, you're way out ahead of me. So
I'll have something to reference.
unless there's anybody, is there any need for any more discussion here, guys? The only thing I wanted to ask Ryan is the number we had a couple weeks ago was 19. Is it still 19?
Yeah, I haven't been polling
That's fine.
anybody else, so.
All right. So unless there's any other discussion, I'll go ahead and make the motion. The Water Management Board recommends council create a sewer SAD for 2021 and post an announcement of a public informational meeting hosted by the village engineer and treasurer. In support of this motion, point 1, septic fields have an adverse impact on our lake's water quality. Improving the quality of the lake water is a main long-term goal of the water board. As of this date, the water board knows of 19 village homeowners interested of the 30 needed to proceed with this SAD. The goal of the informational meeting is to explain to the public both the details of the hooking up process and the financial obligations of the SAD to the homeowner. Concurrent with the setting up of the informational meeting, the Water Management Board is committed to 1, provide website content announcing the SAD, providing detailed information explaining the impact of water quality on septic fields, map of streets where the sewer hookup is available and frequently asked questions. We would further seek, provide social media content on SAD. Finally, seeking out homeowners door to door as needed to get a minimum of 30 households committed. Coordinating this effort with the village. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
We need a roll call, I think, because this probably costs money somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
Hurst,
Yes.
Martini, Duff,
Yes.
I promise you
Nye?
that was not me.
Yes.
Sargent,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Sorry, that was my terrible corgi. He just doesn't behave.
Okay, the motion passes. So not only will they be in the minutes, I will forward this to the village administrator as well. Next item in continuing business. Is there any further discussion on sewer SAD while we're on the topic?
Yeah, I sent out a couple of things. We have a lot of stuff pulled together right now. And what I'm trying to do is coordinate it in a different, to where it's a cascading piece. I sent out a map that I think was taken from John Scott's notes that indicate, I don't know if everybody had a chance to see that. It indicates the area around the lake where the sewer hookups would be available. I think the only thing that I'm kind of missing.
It seemed to be slightly different than what you had put together with Tabitha, and it seemed to show like who had previously signed up for a SAD versus not. It wasn't super clear to me if it was just the roads.
Yeah.
If it was available, or
Yeah,
it should be basically a black and white map with just the colored roads of where the sewer is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The map needs to get improved in that regard, but that's kind of the idea. The other thing is I don't know how expandable a map might be, what we can do on the website, but I guess with somebody's permission, I'll contact the web. I don't know who the webmaster is for our village, but it makes sense to me to package our information in such a way that it's kind of bullet pointed on a homepage to where, here's who's eligible. And then you can hit a link that goes to the map and plus some explanation. Here's the cost of the thing. And you hit that and it has another link that goes to, you kind of following what I'm after?
Yeah.
I don't know if our website has that capacity at the village, but because of the volume of information I think people might want, I think that would be a good way to approach getting it out there.
Right.
Yeah, I think like I said, kind of having the page be a background and frequently asked questions with just links out to the frequently asked questions, right? Who's available, how much does it cost, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simple.
Well, this is what I recommend. This is what I recommend we do is if and when the council passes the motion, agrees to the motion, takes our recommendation, I can contact the village and say, Paul is going to be getting a hold of you guys. He's the lead on this from an informational point of view. And I think it's a great idea. Web content is something that I want to work on throughout the year anyway, not just for this, for a lot of other things.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things we can do with the website. We're gonna have our lake monitoring in there as well. And I think that we could really improve our content. And I really don't understand as well how that is managed by the village, if there's if that's done internally or if they have somebody from the outside that manages the content. But
Yeah.
I think Paul, I think that's the right thing to do, is wait for the motion to be passed or the recommendation to be accepted. And then I'll get a hold of them and say, Tabitha or Dave. I would just go right to Dave and say, Dave, I think it's a great idea. We'll work on it. And then, if we have any questions, we'll get back to you. But I think it's a great idea. And I think that I would just go right to Dave and say, Dave, Paul's gonna get a hold of you about content on the website and next steps, okay?
It sounds good.
All right, that's great. I think it's a really good use of technology there. I'm glad you're more savvy than I am.
Oh, please.
Any other discussion about the sewer SAD? Okay, so we'll talk about canals and muck and what we just heard from Paul. I'll let you guys know. I agree with his recommendations. I think we ought to go after the So Clear and the pump augmentation. Anybody have anything else they want to add to that as a first step? I think it's.
I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention close enough, or it wasn't quite clear to me what the benefit of the different chemical was versus what we did last year. I might have just missed it.
The difference is this chemical has that bonding agent on. It has a little bit of that bonding agent on the
And
phosphorus.
it was the same permit that we currently have, right?
Yeah, we don't have to get a different permit. It's just it is more. It's a twofer because you get the algicide and you get the bonding agent on the phosphorus. But it's not just all bonding agent like the other one. That's 3 times as much money.
Yeah. I mean, I think from the chemical perspective, we should probably take the scientist's word from it. And then the pump house thing seems like a no-brainer. And as Kathy mentioned, like, we should investigate what the outlet of that pump house looks like, and is there something we can do to make it more effective for moving water in the direction we wanted to move.
Okay. Well, again, I wouldn't mind handling this motion like we did this SAD, and then I write something up, staff it around to you guys and Kathy for comment, and then we'll dictate it next month and get it off to the board, get it off to council so we don't miss anything.
No, that's a good idea.
You guys have a problem with that process?
No, that's cool with me. Do you think we actually, the change in chemical is probably not something that actually needs to be in the motion? That probably would just come out of our budget. I don't think it's going to come out, right? Does it technically, if it's not different permitting and stuff like this, does it just change the annual cost of the chemical treatment, then it's still within our budget?
I think we should just follow it. I would, my recommendation is we summarize his recommendation to include the type of chemical to be used, just so it's very clear, and including the costs.
You might want to, because I've heard talk about people's concern about the chemicals and related to our fish. I know these are supposed to be relatively safe, right?
I guess
I have heard people say that the fishing has changed over the last 5 years. Now, I'm not an expert, and I'm sure there's many reasons why, but you know, in terms of just general talk.
I guess my point is the physical chemicals that are applied by our contractor, are they, every time we change them, it goes to council? I don't believe that to be the case.
Okay.
No.
Right?
Then I think that I will just put in there that we're going with the recommendation. This is the recommendation to include chemical that's within the scope of our.
As long as it doesn't cause us to change our budget. If we need to change the budget because it doesn't fit anymore, then we need to go back up, right? I didn't get that
Probably.
compared to what we're currently doing. Does it blow the budget out of the water?
No.
Second chemical seemed like it would.
Yeah, I think it's within the range of our budget right now. I can check. Obviously, the pump side of it, the augmentation pump, is a little bit different. That's a whole new process, and I don't think we'll get. I think that'll be accepted as well, but I certainly think that based on what Kathy said, we need to have some kind of analysis done on the water. But I think if we get the augmentation done, part of the recommendation to the council needs to be on fitting the proper directional nozzle or whatever we want to call it on there. So because just dumping it into the canal to me is it's directional is the important part.
Yep, I agree.
All right, so I will write.
That part is clearly a motion.
I will, I'll write that up and, staff it around and we'll get it approved next month. So, on to aeration. You know, I'm going to tell you guys, this is what I think. I think I agree with Doug. We need to get the stuff out of the lake that we put in the lake. I think we need to put them away for a year. But I don't see, it doesn't sound like the short-term chance of aeration as of today is likely. And I was thinking the only place we'd probably get aeration done in the near term would be in the shallow areas like the canal. So in my mind, we don't have to do it today, but I think I think as far as aeration goes, we need to just maybe find maybe a lower cost solution to pulling those hoses out and getting it all put to bed. Does anybody have a difference of opinion there?
No, I think we should pull it out. I don't think that the science backed up any kind of improvement for the time that we had in there, at least the reports that we had. And yeah, I think we should try the other two things in the canal first. We could keep the system in storage. Whether the hoses can be reused, we should keep as much as feasible. Maybe just the nozzles or something get kept and the hoses go out. But then, yeah, certainly if the pump house doesn't change anything in the canal, maybe we could revisit it. But I think we should try the other things first.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. We don't need to scrap it, but we certainly can store it until we get a little bit more information and maybe
As a board member that's been talking about aeration longer than anybody, I'm all for just pulling it out because I'm sick of talking about it.
Okay. Well, and maybe the science will change and maybe the state's position on aeration changes. It sounds based on Paul's comments that they're making it more and more difficult to do these projects anyway. So we've already felt that pain in the last few years. So with the motion that I'm gonna put together for the canals, I'll also add a motion in there on aeration to have the village administrator check into other ways of getting that equipment out. That quote that we had seems awfully high to me. So,
yeah.
All right. So again, I'll do that and have that ready for next month, staffed. Okay, anything else on aeration?
God, no.
You all know that the transponders were approved last month. Ryan, I think you're going to get on that webinar, right?
Yeah, I signed up.
And there's a webinar, and if you guys are interested, anybody else is interested, there's a webinar on managing the lake levels with the onset system. I thought it'd be a good education. And I know the village administrator is going to be on there, and he may ask Andy to get on there as well. I think that'd be a good idea. I think Andy's going to want to be pretty engaged with this system. So we'll see how that goes. So that's transponders. I assume that Dave's chasing that down already about getting the equipment on order. I think he's already sent it out. They get the equipment, it's on order. But obviously as soon as it comes in, I'm kind of looking at Ryan to help lead at least the software side of that.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that's not getting installed anytime soon. So even if we get it in hand, it's gonna be a springtime event.
No, but I'm just saying that when it gets here,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be any great science project to put it on, get it mounted. I'm not exactly sure how much the village is gonna be involved with it, but I hope that they will be involved with that. I assume they will be. And we'll get, again, this gets back to web content and getting getting the pushes set up and
Yep.
also the web content, but that shouldn't be too hard. I think looks really user friendly, especially to somebody that understands this stuff.
Yeah, it looks pretty
easy. Anything to discuss about about the harvester?
No, it's parked.
I think I alluded to this last time, but I talked to the guy up in Lake Oakland, and they pay some like 50 grand a year to have somebody come in and do their harvesting. And it's like twice a year, not every day, So we're a little lucky. I mean, it's nice that we have our own harvester. Ryan, are we going to get to the point where we're going to have some sort of automated upload on data to the website?
I haven't followed up on that, but yeah, we should.
Think it's there? You think it's possible?
I think it could be possible. Yep.
Okay. Do you know if you're going to have the same operator this year?
I have no idea. I'm not in charge of operators.
Okay. All right. He's graduating.
Is he?
Yeah.
Hey, listen, if there's an operator opening, I'm sure I gotta convince my dad to move to Michigan. He would run that thing. He'd love it.
Yeah.
He'd be out there every day. You wouldn't have to worry about not mowing the same spot twice in a week.
Well, I think the operator is a big part of that. So hopefully if it's a different operator, it's going to be just as good. So he or she. Lake erosion, not for today, but I'm going to go back and look and see what the council actually agreed to last time. And I want to get the village administrator to see if we get somebody out to the Shankin culvert. It doesn't cost anybody any money, but it would be a good idea to see what that sort of project would cost. If the council thinks it's not a good idea, then we'll go on to something else. I'll make that motion next month as well. Lake enforcement issues. Ryan, I know you've been working on a statement. I think it was you, wasn't it?
No, I think
No.
I was for something other. But you mean regarding the snowmobile thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think we should talk about it with the chief next month if we're going to have
Yeah.
him come in. I think that'd be the appropriate time and
Okay.
try and get some
Yeah.
thoughts together. I mean, I think we should work with them. I mean, the overall message of the village, if the police want, if the chief wants it to stay as is, then I don't know how much more we can
Yeah.
do. If he's willing to, entertain some other educational aspects of what might be safe and what might not be safe, and some information about the lake, then we should provide that information. But I think we
Yeah.
got to kind of sync up with him on the message.
Okay. All right. I think he's wide open for education. I really do. So, as he told me, one of his officers more than willing to provide that snowmobilers education, safety education as well, but nobody seemed to be interested. Maybe with the events that have unfolded in the past month that might change.
Yeah.
And speaking of boater safety course, Kathy, don't you usually handle that, or is that just something that happens?
No, that's something the chief was handling, the boater safety.
Great.
Yeah, that
Okay.
goes to public
It's
safety.
all him. And I
All
was
right.
trying to get him to do 2 a year, just because it always lands on the golf outing. But now with COVID, none of that is happening, so I think it's irrelevant.
Yeah, well, I think it'd be interesting to talk to him about just the idea of doing it virtually, because with this kind of system, it just as conducive as going and sitting in that room, so. But we can talk to him about that next month as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know what he has planned for 2021. Did they even do it in 2020?
I don't think so. I
Yeah,
think that was about the time when we were all,
Canceled it because you could get it online through the state.
all right, well,
So,
Let's
and it's
talk
like
to-
an 8-hour class in person.
oh,
Yeah.
let's talk to him next week about that, because I think a virtual offering, especially after everybody's been through the last year, is just as good, if there's interest or not. But
Boater safety course is 8 hours in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he won't let my children come yet.
they're too young.
Killing me, people.
Yeah, I sat through it with my kids, so wow, it's a long day,
It is.
but necessary. Plant control and invasive species, I think we've got that covered so far with Paul's schedule. I assume nobody had a problem with his schedule, so anybody have any other comments about plant control? Yeah, you have an assistant. Huron Valley Watershed Council. Mike, you're working on it.
Yes, I am.
Can't break through yet.
Not yet.
No, keep the faith.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. Oh, is my screen still being shared?
Yes.
Hang on. Where are you? Oh, geez.
We got your
I
board
could
calendar up.
I could turn
Is the
that
calendar
off
up
if you-
there?
Yeah.
All right, great. This was the calendar that I sent out, was part of the minutes
Yeah.
that went out. I don't know if we have much to talk about. I'll flip flop the police with Parks and Rec. Like next month, I want to talk about our goals and objectives. I'll probably send it all out to you guys. I'm making it, the list is pretty long as we go through there. And what I think I'm going to do is, we've already got plenty of things to work on. I'm just going to categorize them under safety, lake health and recreation. And then maybe we can talk about some, overarching 3 long-term goals, like, got motherhood and apple pie, make the lake more enjoyable for the citizens. That's very broad, and then get into specifics. But, we have gotten, the list is getting really long. There's a lot of good ideas, and there's more to come. So I think we got plenty to do. And then I will also rework the progressive column there about what, when they're going to be here doing what, now that we got Paul's agenda or his schedule. Anybody have any particular concerns or comments about this calendar? It's always a work in progress, obviously, and it fills in as we go.
Well, I don't have the 5-year in front of me, but I assume this kind of fits in with that. I mean, we're moving ahead on longer range projects like SADS and the muck piece.
No, you know what? I don't have the 5-year on there, but here's this is everything we got going on already. I was going to classify them into 3 areas, and at that point, what I would suggest is that under each area of the three areas that we have our long vision in there. So, it's just obviously a work in progress here.
Oh, yeah.
And, but, we've got a lot out there already. I have not really gotten very far on my bird nesting pole idea and what exactly that entails. I do have a lot of interest in the improving the access to the lake of all residents and, the subdivision lots, the road endings. I have this idea that maybe we can talk this little kayak club we have to maybe joining in with us to do a trash collection in the spring, paddle around in their kayaks and collect some of the garbage that collects around, not that there's any beer cans in front of my property, but there seems to be beer cans in front of my property. And I don't drink that kind of beer. So anyway, we got a lot going on. I'm just trying to keep it sort of organized, and as we roll through this, it gets more organized. I think we're going to I'll add the bullet in here about what's going on with the canals. But anybody have any particular heartburn about that? I think maybe Paul, the way things are going, I think maybe when we get to the fall, we can start maybe really thinking about these long-term goals now that, once we get through this year, and how we can kind of not only sketch them out, but also put them out there on the website, this is what we do. This is where we want to go. There's some webinars coming up. I sent you guys some of those links. One of them is something that I mentioned before, and that's legacy. What do you want this lake to look like in 20 years? And that's kind of seems like pie in the sky, but doesn't hurt to think that way. Thank God that we had guys 20 years ago thinking out ahead, because there was a lot of things going on 20 years ago that we're benefiting from now. So that's sort of where I'm going with that. And that's actually the next piece of the continuing business, which is goals and objectives. So I'll just keep working on this. Probably in the next month or two, I'll staff it out. We can start making it pretty. And at some point in this year, this is all part of this website content that I think we need to get our arms around. How can we leverage the website? Possibly how can we leverage the any social media pages? My company is just going through a big thing where we're paying somebody for our social media content, and not that we need to pay anybody, but there may be some things that we as a board can think about there, as well as the village, on shaping the message. So and I'm not even on Facebook, so I'm really don't know what I'm talking about, but it sounds cool. Okay, anybody have any comments about the calendar, goals, and objectives? Like I said, it's work in progress. I'll keep changing it as we go along. I think probably next month we're going to get started talking about some budgeting. That process has got to be coming up soon. Anyway, anybody have anything else there? Lots of talk. Okay. Future business items. And this is, to me, just placeholders. We got the boat count, we got the bird count, and we got the 2021 budget. Doug, I know you do the boat count. Somewhere out there, there's a way for us to get our lake assessed for how many boats the capacity of the lake has for boats. the state somewhere out there on the internet, there's somebody that can do that for us. I think it'd be really interesting to know what the scientists think our lakes can handle as far as boats go versus how many we have. Boat count and bird count are both things that I would like to get on the website in the future. We have the data. We need to find a way to make it pretty and get it out there. I can tell you that my wife thinks the number of boats on the lake's gone way up. I don't think that's actually the case from the boat count. I think it's maybe people are using their boats more, but I don't think there's more boats. I think our boat count peaked a couple years ago, actually, unless we're not counting right. And then the bird count is what kind of driven me to think about the blue herons, because we were bouncing around between 0 and 5 over the last however how many years there's a bird count data. 2021 budget, I honestly have lost track of when we're going to be having on that. It's got to be in the next couple months. I think Bob was going to be bringing something to us maybe next month. Any other comments on that? All right. I don't think we don't have to worry about a village council liaison report. How about the planning commission?
The first meeting for the planning commission for 2021 is going to be on the 18th of this month. So nothing yet.
I doubt it.
Oh,
but they even
forgive-
moved it to accommodate. So
Forgive me. Can you please tell us what the planning commission does?
well, funny you should ask.
Well, I mean, when they're meeting, what do they do?
When we meet, we normally review. First off, we review ordinances to make sure they make sense. In some cases, you've heard me talk about our prohibition against commercial vehicles. People can't drive their commercial vehicle and park it in their home. So we looked at that in a more realistic way so that people that work that maybe own a small construction company could drive their pickup truck home with the name of their company on the side. And the other thing we do is we look at people who petition to get variances for different things, different fence heights, or we had people that wanted to be allowed to grow chickens.
Where is the village on chickens?
We've decided that we don't care for them being
Are they-
raised in the village.
Are they technically not allowed?
Technically, they're not allowed. True. There are some communities. I understand Royal Oak has some, and the people that want to do that make a case that, boy, if you keep it clean and all that stuff, it can be a good thing. And I'm sure it can. However, you got to count on everybody's, determination to make that a priority for themselves. So, yeah,
All right.
we didn't grant that particular variance.
So if somebody starts putting stakes out in their yard and it looks like they're going to be overhanging the lake with their house, you guys get involved with that, or is that
Yes.
enforcement people?
Well, it ends up being zoning people and the enforcement people, but we'll usually hear about it. Somebody will get in touch with us and they'll want to put, like, if you've already got a patio down at the lake and it's got little walls kind of up around it, then you kind of shot your wad. You don't get to build that pizza oven down by the lake. So there's only so much you can do that will obscure your sight line of your neighbors. So we try to pay attention to that sort of stuff.
What's the ordinance on fences?
Actually, we just had that come up. It's 3 feet, like in the side areas. Can't have anything across the front of the lake. And now we've gone to 6 feet on the side of the houses, in between houses. And that
6
was
feet.
accommodate pets. You were having people that had bigger pets that could just kind of hang over a fence if it was only 3 feet.
Okay.
So, but now you can go 6 feet, or you will be able to. I think the village passed that.
All right.
So.
All righty.
All right.
Thanks for that review.
My pleasure.
Any comments from the board members?
Yeah, the progressive contract.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Doug. All right. I make a motion that we recommend to the council to have the village administrator negotiate with Progressive an extension to their contract through 2022 in accordance with the quote of $18,500 per year. The village has this quote in hand.
Gonna support that, Doug?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Roll call.
Hurst,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Duff,
Yes.
Martini,
Yes.
Sergeant.
Yes.
Any other comments? Did I forget anything else?
Good job, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. Hannah, how we doing?
You're doing awesome.
All right. Again, thank you. And please, if there's something that we're doing that's not helping you out with your notes, let us know. Don't be bashful.
Okay.
And unless anybody has anything else, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. See you
Thank
guys
you.
next month. Keep an
Okay.
eye on your email.
You betcha.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
No, not turn it.
Okay, well, good meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I will be ending the